Hey, I heard Phoenix has a new brush. What?
It's true. Are you a little creeped out? I'm a little creeped out for you. But seriously, the Astraeus, the 10th brush in PAA's newest line of brushes, brand new fibers. These fibers have not been used on any other brushes in the PAA line, any brush period, to my knowledge. Doug and Fran are calling these new fibers Micro Super Future. So what I want to do in this video is give a little bit of an introduction to those who don't already own the Astraeus. Talk about what it is and what sets it apart besides the new fibers from the other brushes that we have come to know from PAA. One thing, just like the other 9, it's killer. 22 millimeter. If you've seen my introduction to Phoenix brushes, you might recall a portion of that video where I talked about 22 millimeter to 26 millimeter is kind of my sweet spot. Anything under 20, you start getting a little too small. Anything much over 26, especially once I get around 30, just too much brush. And where it becomes too much brush for me is that there's not enough flow. It's too thick. Everything gets locked up inside, and so it's hard to get the soap and the water to flow through, to be released from the fibers. I don't care what kind of fiber it is, natural, synthetic, doesn't matter. The bigger the knot, the more that is going to hold it in. And on the contrary, the smaller the knot, the more that's going to not hold it in. Something with observation that I've noticed, some people are under the impression that a smaller knot means less splay. That's not entirely true. As you'll see in the photos, and I'll also put these photos at the end of the video, knot diameter, the width around the bottom of the knot, how big around it is, has very little to do with splay of the knot. Where splay comes into play is loft height. So we're talking about the overall length of the fibers that stick out of the brush. Green Ray, Solar Flare, 2 of my favorite brushes. These are on the smaller side of Doug's brushes. The first 9, we had these 2, and then the other 7 were taller. These both have 24 millimeter knots. However, the Green Ray has a 57 millimeter loft. The Solar Flare has a 55, I got that right? 55 millimeter loft, as does the Astraeus. So 55, 55. And just like you can see in the video or in the picture there, the splay is almost identical. And that's because it has nothing to do, very little to do with the knot diameter. What affects the splay of a brush is the length of the fiber. And that, to me, it makes sense. The longer the fiber, the more it's going to cover your face. It doesn't matter how wide it is, right? And with both of these brushes, as you can see against my gingery pale skin here, I end up with about the same coverage. The difference is minuscule. This is an acrylic handle. I love the moon and star underneath here. This is named after the Greek god of dusk, and that is Astraeus. He married Eos, who's the Greek goddess of the dawn, not to be confused with the astrological deity known as the goddess of the moon, and that was Selene, and then the goddess of night is Nyx, N-I-X. Who could it be, kids? I thought we might have a visitor, but it was our teenage daughter who has a key but didn't have her key. I was talking about the astrological deities. Something that's really cool about the way that PAA does a lot of their stuff. It was like a science fiction type twist, or, you know, named after stars and moons, astrological deities like we we're just talking about. As a kid who grew up in the 80s with, you know, Star Wars and all the great iconic things that went on around science fiction, even E.T., Phone Home, I dig it. And I dig the name of this brush. I'm going to tie this brush in with one of PAA's soaps that I think is super cool, the way that they tie together. And I'll do that in a shave video. I've shaved with this now 4 times. Whipped up a lather 5 or 6 times, I think 6. On the sales page, it says that it has a little less backbone than the others. And perhaps I've been playing with it. And especially when you can compare it up against the Green Ray and the Solar Flare, it's the same. I really think that the difference, if there is a difference, is extremely minuscule, and you won't notice it. I've tried to notice it, and there's really not much to notice. I think that's about wraps it up. I highly suggest this brush. I love the way it feels in my hand. You got these cuts, these grooves, the shape. It's amazing. It was something that, you know, also is super cool about the way that Doug and PA does stuff is right here at the bottom of his sales pages for his brushes, how he talks about how if it doesn't move him, I'll let you read it. But I think that's super cool. And it goes back to something that I've said before. And you can see it right here in this little snippet of the sales page. In my opinion, one of the reasons why Phoenix has been so damn successful is because Doug is a wet shaving hobbyist. He is a schnerd just like I am, and he gets us. And that's one of the reasons why he continues to just come up with these killer things. I could be out in left field. I'm always out in left field. And when I'm not in left field, I spend a little bit of time in center field. Have you tried this brush? For less than $20, $19.95. You can't go wrong, guys. And it's beautiful. It is. It really is. It's badass. And I don't think you're going to do any better with a synthetic at any price. I really think that, again, dollar for dollar, Doug and Fran have killed it. These new fibers are spot on. It retains. One thing it does do, and I did a couple of tests, maybe I'll attach a test at the end, but I built up lathers, and I tried to do identical lathers. And one of the things I was doing, I was in the bathroom, and I was flinging it at the bath wall, the wall of the bathtub. And I'm not kidding, this flung better. And since it's a 22 millimeter, like I was talking about a few minutes ago, it shouldn't hold on to things as well as a 24, right? I was talking about flow. And so a 24 millimeter would have less flow than a 22 millimeter, meaning that this 24 millimeter is going to hold on to things better than a 22 millimeter, in theory, right? Scientifically speaking, on paper. But test after test, I did like a couple with each brush up against this one. So I did this one like 4 times, and then I did these 2. This actually held on to the soap and the water more than the bigger knots, which goes against the thinking, right? But again, these are brand new fibers. They continue to innovate, and my hat's off. My hat's off to you. It's the little big things. This is a kick-ass little big thing. It is smaller than some brushes, and pay attention to the photos at the end. You'll see that it is slightly taller than the Green Ray, but it's slightly shorter than the Solar Flare. It's not small. I have small brushes. It's not big. It's a Goldilocks brush. And with these fibers, they do dry out faster than even these fibers. And I think that's partially because it is the new material, but also it's 22 millimeter. So again, we're going to go back to flow and the way that the air and water is able to work its way through the thinner knot at the bottom. It dries out faster. This brush dries out in a couple of hours. What else can I say? What else can I say? Get you some. I did pay for this. It is not a gift. I bought this with my own money, and I'm not an affiliate, and I will not profit from you buying this in any way. However, if you don't have one, I think you should have one. Y'all take care of yourself. Remember, it's only shaving, and it's always the little big things. At the end of the day, on your deathbed, it's the little big things.